jump into looking at the potential relationship compatibility between Meagan Good and Jonathan Majors. They are a couple, they're both actors. And there's a lot of, there's been some controversy about the relationship, mostly because he was charged with, there was some domestic violence allegations from his ex girlfriend, and he had to go to trial. And at that time, um, Megan and him started, went public, and a lot of people were just looking at it like, what's going on? Like, he has a domestic violence charge. Is this really a good move for Megan? As many of us may know, that Megan was formerly married to Devon Franklin. I don't know if it's Devon or Devon, but they were married, and he is a pastor. He's a director, producer. So they're both been in the entertainment industry. And I'm trying to remember when they got divorced. I want to say it was like 2020. It was 2021 they got divorced. And so, so going from a marriage to then dating someone else, of course, it's not out of the ordinary, but it is when someone has domestic violence charges, and there's just like a lot of allegations around that. A lot of people came out from the woodworks from his past, like, trying to say, like, he had history of doing this, alleging that. Some people came out as a character witnesses for him. So it was a lot going on. Okay. And it did impact his career because he's been in, some pretty high profile movies. But I think there was a movie he was supposed to be in that they cut him from. And I don't remember which one it was. But I believe he got dropped by Disney. So he was supposed to be in one of the Disney movies. I think one of the superhero movies or something like that. He was dropped. Either way, Marvel and Disney dropped Majors from any upcoming projects, according to this article on PBS.org. Let's get into the synastry. Like, do we see that this could be a good relationship? First thing I want to start with in a relationship is, of course, we're going to look at the moon and Venus and all that, the sun. So she's a Leo sun. That's not surprising in terms of how vibrant she is, how she looks. She's very, a lot of people find her very attractive. And also, she is the way she speaks. She's a Mercury and Leo. And Mercury and Leo people tend to speak with a lot of, there's a lot of like exuberant tone in their voice. They seem really excited about what they're talking about. And so she has her sun conjunct Mercury, which means like, yeah, she's known for being an actress, but at the same time, like in her interviews, she comes alive. She's not a boring interviewee at all. So it doesn't surprise me. She's been talking the most about the relationship. Okay. He's a Virgo. And so when you look at them and you see like their interactions, he does seem less exuberant. He seems a little bit more stoic in a way. She's been doing most of the talking about the relationship. Does not surprise me. It's a Mercury and Leo. Now, she does have a new movie out with Corey Hardwick, a Tyler Perry movie that deals with like a couple going through a divorce. And so, of course, she's going to be interviewed probably a little bit more than him at this time. But she's been talking about the relationship. But Leos like to talk a lot about the things they pride themselves in. She's a lot of Leo energy. She's a sun, she's a Mercury, and her North Node is in Leo. So I would say even with her North Node being in Leo, stardom was probably in the cards for her, or just being someone who is seen in the limelight. Like her talent, being a child actress, those things were really well aligned. As I say before, people who have planets in the same sign as their North Node, they get help, right? They get a little bit of help to fulfill their North Node rather than people who just have their North Node by themselves, okay? So already it's like, okay, Leos, we know, are just a little bit more active, open. What's interesting about them before I jump into his sun sign is that, they have opposite sign nodes. They're not at the same or similar degree. They're pretty far apart, but they do have opposite sign nodes. I do find people are usually drawn to people that have nodes that are in the opposite sign, or you find some sort of balance within that, because he's here to seek Aquarian type experiences. He's here to join, to be a part of something. He is here to even maybe create a group or organization or something like that, or feel like he's a part of something. She is here to shine on her own accord. So I do think that's very interesting. And when I see that South Node, North Node opposition happen, I usually want people to make sure they're not getting sucked away from their North Node need by the other person's energy dominating. Hopefully that makes sense. Virgo men can often also craft an image just to share it, okay? They can craft it. Now, what works out for them is their son, his son, and her Venus are conjunct, right? So there's a yeah, like when we're talking about compatibility, regardless, some people are like, is this a publicity stunt? She's dating him just so he looks better. He's trying to integrate himself back into like people's graces by dating like a really popular actress. There were some racial components to his last relationship, his interracial relationship. People were trying to make allegations like, oh, he's just using her to get back with like popularity around black entertainment. Like that's the conversation. Like that's just what it is. People have been saying that, but it's like even if there is some like in the beginning, it started off as kind of this you help me, I'll help you out type of thing. Like they do have shared synastry. Her Venus conjuncts his Sun and his Mars, so they're both, I would say, rather strategic about what they do share about the relationship. Her is the Mercury and Leo. She's a little bit more expressive. She's revealing, like, probably going to reveal a lot more. He is more of a person that, like, he feels like I don't need to explain. He's the type of person that's likely, oh, you know, what do people say that phrase? What's understood doesn't have to be explained. Like that's what his energy is giving because his Sun conjunct Mars is almost like I'm going to lead by actions. As a Virgo, Mars in Virgo, he is very strategic about how he is portrayed, how he looks. He is not someone that is doing things necessarily without having some type of agenda or plan, especially if we look at the 22nd degree. And I don't always mean that in a negative way. Perhaps there are other things in his life, perhaps there are other things in his life where he has had um, he's had success. He has a 22nd degree Mars that's associated with Capricorn. He also has Saturn in Capricorn. So he has to be careful here. It's in retrograde though. So Saturn and Capricorn people do take themselves very seriously. His sense of responsibility, his sense of reputation, it does matter to them. But he also has Saturn conjunct Uranus in retrograde. Okay, and so learning lessons about being impulsive, whether it means, again, with the allegations, we have, they are, I think he was found guilty. Let me double check. He was found guilty of misdemeanor assault and harassment, okay, of his ex girlfriend. So he was found guilty, okay. And so, really, when we look at Uranus and Capricorn, it's almost like, look, it's in the first degree, it's an Aries degree. This can mean someone who is a little bit, can be explosive, but doesn't want it to harm their image. Saturn. Not only that, he has Neptune in retrograde. So he has a Capricorn stellium in retrograde. So it's almost like he'll work really hard to get good positions, to get respect, but he has to really watch the decisions he makes because he can definitely tarnish his name. He can definitely end up in situations where he is working against himself. All right. Then we look at his moon. Okay, his moon is in Sagittarius. Her moon's in Scorpio. Moon is Scorpio. Saturn. She's a Leo with a Scorpio moon. I would say she probably is a person that loves hard, and I wouldn't be surprised if she even acknowledges that, or like she will admit that about herself. She loves very hard, and if she feels this attachment to this relationship, when she does the interview, she seems rather sincere about being with them. But we look at the fact of, are their moon signs compatible? One, we do not have their degree. So we do not know, are there moon signs, what degree. We don't know, is what, we don't know exact squares, exact oppositions, or anything like that because we do not have their degree at the time of birth. However, what we do have is she's a moon in Sag. Okay, he's a moon in Sag. He's a moon in Sag no matter what, because when we look and we pull up August 8th, 1981, and I pull up the moon cycle. 1 second. I always double check. So when I don't have someone's birth time, you can always go to AstroSeek and just double check the moon phase and the moon cycle for the day that the person was born. And it'll help you see, did the moon change that day? And he's at a very low degree moon. That's why you would want to check. But no, the moon did not change until August 9th, okay, of the year that he was born, of that time period. So yes, he's a Sag moon. Sag moons, he's rather optimistic. I don't think he's going to let the allegations and the one situation. I don't think he's going to let it harm what he wants to do. I think he's probably going to end up getting more opportunities. I know that may make some people a little bit mad. He does have. Oh, I did not know that he has a daughter. Wait a minute. He has a daughter? Yeah, look at this. 3 weeks ago, it says Deadline says Johnny will star in supernatural revenge thriller Yep. I said they're not. Yeah. He's. I know people feel whatever way they want to feel. I know that the allegations are serious. Domestic violence is very serious, and none of us want to support people that are harming others. But look at his chart. He's someone who's going to continue to get opportunities. Now, again, he's going to have to be really careful about how he utilizes this. Next time you got a chance to now still be in your field, in your craft, people are still going to work with him. He has lost some opportunities as well, of course, which can be difficult. He's Venus and Libra. He has the ability to make partnerships, strike deals with people, but it's going to be very important for him not to let his ego get in the way. Because even if we look at the fact of him having this Libra energy, he is a smooth talker, and that's not, Libra energy is the smooth talker. He's Mercury in Libra, ninth degree. He makes people believe whatever he wants them to believe, right? And then you have a Virgo, and we think of Virgo as very strategic. And especially when we look at Virgo in terms of how it's used, depending on who you are. Virgo men can be very, very persuasive. They have an agenda. I'm not saying every single Virgo man on earth, but look, we're talking about what we know about him, right? And so even if he does genuinely like Megan, a Virgo always knows why they're doing what they're doing. And so she's Venus in Virgo. She's always trying to fix a relationship. She sees a relationship and says, or a man, and she's like, yeah, but so what if he's not perfect? And I think that sounds controversial, contradictory, because we look at Virgo, it's like, but wait, doesn't Virgo seek perfection? But Venus in Virgo can definitely see the flaws in something. But Venus in Virgo thinks it can polish it up. She's at the 18th degree, that's a Virgo degree, so that deals with efficiency. So it's almost like she can sometimes view these relationships as like a project, a process. She has this idea, like, I don't need someone that's perfect. I just need someone that's me, that's for me. She also has some Libra energy. We just talked about his Libra energy. She has Jupiter, Saturn there as well, and they are making aspects to his Mercury. And so even when we look at this union of, I think he enjoys the mental stimulation from the relationship. I'm looking at this Mercury. I'm also looking at this Virgo energy he has in this chart. Mercury is dealing with communication. Jupiter and Saturn can represent, she is someone that I think they're kind of like, let's take it one day at a time. Let's take it step by step. But I do think she's someone that if it did grow and evolve, she'd be fine with that. I feel like if whether this is, publicity stunt or not, they have started to really like each other. He has, she said he supported her when she went to ask for money. The Tyler Perry movie she's in, she was afraid to ask for a certain amount of money because she said in the past she has been so underpaid and undervalued. Um, and he was like, no, you need to ask for that. And so, of course that changes depending on, in Hollywood, there is a lot of unequal pay. Even though we can look at Hollywood stars and be like, they make more money than us, there's unequal pay situations that sometimes can happen, right? Especially when you think of like female actresses and you think of black female actresses and like that is a real thing. It's documented. Like there's a difference there. And so she's maybe had some issues dealing with understanding her worth. Wouldn't be surprised, confidence in that area. We also look at Meagan, she has Chiron and Taurus. What did I just say? When people have Chiron and Taurus, they sometimes can struggle with their own worth, self-value, knowing how to, knowing what you offer, what you bring, and how you can utilize it to make something that is successful. 22nd degree, but look at his 22nd degree, Mars. So Jonathan already knows. And again, it's very different depending on your socialization, your gender, what groups you belong to, how confident you are. He's younger than her, but it seems almost like he has had more experience with making a certain amount of money than she has, if you really look into reading between the lines. So how she has Chiron in 22nd degree, she's successful. We've seen, those of us who have been around for a bit, we've seen Meagan since she was a kid. She's been in movies and TV shows. We've seen her throughout her career. But he has Mars in Virgo, 22nd degree, making that sextile to her Chiron at the 22nd degree. So that's where in which we could see somebody help someone else. All right. Pluto, I would say, in terms of how we're looking at it, like, one, I want to take a step back for a minute to look at, one, she's a relationships girl. Look, I'm not going to come at y'all, but a lot of Leo women, a lot of Leo people are relationship people. If they can have one, they'll have one. They'll talk. Look, she's got that Sun conjunct Mercury. She got divorced in 2021. She's back in a relationship in 2023. Think of a lot of our other Leo women we know and love. Halle Berry, J Lo, right? Madonna. No matter what you think, these ladies are iconic, right? No matter what your opinions are of them, they're iconic. Okay, they are they paved their way. They paved the way, regardless of what you think about some of the women I just mentioned. So the point that I'm making is Leo women are gonna they attract a lot of attention, and sometimes Leo women specifically have to know what attention, what to take and what not to take, what to give, what not to give, because you will see like Leo women will have relationships. And they like being in relationships. It gives them a great sense of, pride to even be around certain people and be in certain unions. So not surprised at all with that. And again, I'm not saying every Leo woman is like that. If I'm doing your chart, I would talk about your chart. One thing I found really interesting here, I just talked about her Chiron. His Chiron's in Cancer. Her Mars is in Cancer. They're both at the 14th degree. Both of them have something to stabilize in terms of their emotions, but with him, he has something to deal with. I don't know what his relationship is like with women, but that Chiron there can mean there is some issue he has with feminine energy. All right. Jupiter in Cancer should be, it's an exalted sign. It should be a good sign. He should be able to, expand through what he is, how he's connecting to people and how he's relating to people in terms of his emotions. But if you have conflict with your ex girlfriend that causes a domestic violence dispute and allegations, that's not the case. So let's look here. Okay. He spent his early years living with his mother, who's a pastor, his older sister, and his younger brother, and his father was on a U.S. base. He said in 2020, disappeared and resurfaced 17 years later. He's reconnected with his father. Major got in trouble when he was younger, shoplifting, suspended from high school for fighting, living in his car while working two jobs. Wow. So, but he did end up getting his bachelor's at University of North Carolina. He also attended Yale in the Master of Fine Arts. So he has a professional degree in acting. Okay. And so, but you saw that, right? When I talked about that, the Uranus and Capricorn in that first degree of like, but this is the interesting thing about his chart. He's able to get back on track. If he's able to get back on track, he's going to usually see things work out in his favor, right? But at the same time, we look at this, it's like, Chiron conjunct Jupiter, it's almost like a difficulty. His emotions kind of take over him. His emotions can sometimes be difficult for him to contain or him to really deal with effectively. And the thing about it is, when we look at Jupiter and Capricorn, Cancer, I think for him, that represents he's actually probably, that's probably why he's such a good actor. I'm not as familiar with his work, but clearly I'm not as familiar, but I would say like you do have a pretty good sense of Cancer can evoke emotion. And so that's where we see that he's able to do that in a very effective, efficient way. But he's also dealing with his own emotions. But again, there's maybe a trauma bond between him and Meagan in terms of how they're dealing with things. They've related. There's experiences that they've had that I would bet, especially when we look at the overlap of like, okay, they share verbal energy, they share some Scorpio energy a little bit, they share some Libra energy, they share some Cancer energy, that there are maybe some bonds, trauma bonds that they have. There's some way in which they relate it to one another, especially with all this Libra energy conjuncting one another. There's some way in shape and form in which they have done that. Now, what I would find interesting here is I would want to know if I knew Meagan's degree of her moon, because if her moon is conjunct, if her moon is lower degree than 23, low enough to conjunct that Pluto he has, that could also represent their pull and their attraction to each other, their draw to one another. Because on the surface, people are like, we didn't really see that coming. He doesn't look like who she usually dates. She's, few years older than him. Not that it's a big deal. It's not a huge age gap. But so it's not really what we would assume, right? In terms of who he would date or even who she would date and that type of thing. So I do think that's a very interesting point there. In terms of what is the connection between the two of them. Now, what in his chart could make him in any way appear angry, be a threat, have an issue with anyone? So let's look and see. Now, what would be interesting to me is if his moon is at a higher degree of Sag, then that could mean, let's say his moon is between 15, let's say 15, 14, I don't know, 15 to 29 degrees Sag. Let's say he's a 15 to 29 degrees Sag. That would mean his moon and his Mars square. Even if his moon is at like a 14th degree, his sun and his moon square. So if we had a birth time for him, I think that would be really helpful for us to say, like, well, we've seen the video. There's some level of anger that came out, right? Like the video. What would we need to have? What would someone need to have in their chart? Because on surface, we're looking like this Venus and Libra person. He likes relationships. He likes being with someone. He likes the idea of having a partnership. Remember what I said before, maybe in my other channel. Venus and Libra likes the partnership, companionship part of it at any cause. This is a cardinal energy, but it doesn't mean it understands it at its depth, at its core. But it's great energy to be around. Venus rules Libra, so it means it's prioritizes this time, this kind of like coming together, being together, having someone to be around, confiding, partnering up, those types of things. But what would we need to see? I also think, again, all this retrograde energy, especially with Uranus conjunct Saturn, really speaks to this. I'm trying to be stable. I like the image of being responsible and stable, but I sometimes can struggle. Like I'm speaking as if I'm this placement or I'm this person, right? Because when you look at it, you also can see, well, we do have a square between Jupiter and Mercury. Mercury square Jupiter. So has a difficulty making sense of the things that he wants to communicate with the way they come out. Again, I'm not making excuses for anyone. I'm just saying, like, Mercury square Jupiter. Someone that can have a difficulty with the way in which they impact other people. Because ideally, Jupiter is expansive and positive and optimistic, but it's also far reaching, right? So that Mercury square Jupiter can represent like someone who can kind of lash back with words or verbal, using someone's knowledge against them, like using something you know about someone against them. I'm going to tell everybody this about you. I'm going to tell everybody this about you. That type of energy is Mercury square Jupiter when the person is mad, of course. Next, so all right. We're not going to talk about the midheaven because we don't know. We don't know the ascendant. We don't know the midheaven. We don't know the descendant. We don't know the IC for real, right? We don't have the birth time, so we're not going to, really go in depth about anything that would be specific. But last thing I want to capture about this situation, this relationship, is they both have Juno in Libra. Juno marriage asteroid, Juno partner, significant partner is what I call it. Especially for people that aren't married, but in long-term relationships or serious relationships. All right, so hers, they're both at Cancer degrees. Both of their Junos are at Cancer degrees. Hers a little bit deeper. Fulfillment. Truly wanting she wants the realm of the relationship, the marriage. I think that's what she thought she was getting with Devon. And I'm sorry if it's Devon, I don't know. But I know who he is. I just don't remember how the name is pronounced. But the Juno, the 28th degree, is a little bit more good than the advanced degree compared to the 4. Where the 4 is he likes the idea. But again, the 4 is going to represent what he needs. She needs fullness in a relationship. She needs a relationship with a person as committed as her. Pluto conjunct Juno. His Juno is conjunct Mercury. So his need is going to be through communication, and it's going to be through relating, and it's going to be through that. He has to be careful not to dominate the conversation. Mercury square Jupiter. I know more than you, right? He has to be careful about that in his relationships. Okay. A Virgo. Okay, Virgo is a Mercury sign. Can be very intelligent, very witty. But he also has to make sure he's not overdoing it. Like, a lot of times you can get that. And then Virgo male, the ego is in the mind. It's not, the ego isn't the same as a Leo. The ego is going to be a little bit different in a Virgo man than it will for another sign. But the ego can still be there, especially if you are successful, especially if you are seeing yourself as all important or whatever the case may be. So his lesson is around someone who is off. He's learned how to reciprocate emotions. He has to learn how to give and take, and not just take, and not just think that the relationship is going to be just based on what his needs and personal desires are. All right. And just like hers are more someone that is going to play the full course. So in this situation, I think she would have to really look at, if she views this as a serious relationship, what does she really want out of it? What does she really need out of it? What does she really think is going to be very important? Okay. Because again, we look at him, his chart, he has a lot of markers for success. The Chiron in Cancer, for some people, can represent issues with women. issues with the feminine, issues with emotions. He has Chiron. Even if we look at this, Chiron making that opposition to Neptune in Capricorn, right? In retrograde. Viewing Neptune and Capricorn in general is, energy which you're supposed to apply reality, through the ways which you really wish and which you envision. But you also can't be delusional about what you envision. You have to make sure it's realistic. So he can have issues with image. What does he want women to be? Virgo could be very specific, very analytical. I need women, if this is how it is, I need my woman to look like this. Especially Venus and Libra too. I need her to look like this, be like this. So there can be this kind of like, you know, um, dominant type of energy he has towards the feminine, towards women that he dates in terms of what he needs them to be like, what he needs them to act like. Okay, now that Mars in Cancer with Megan, it's not going to be right. I don't. She's a Leo. She's fiery. Yeah, she's petite and pretty and all that, but she's fiery. Like at the end of the day, like she's someone that's going to speak her mind. She's a Mercury Leo. You can only push her for so long. So again, hopefully there's, relationship is healthy and functioning, and he has learned his lessons in terms of how to engage in relationships because, again, he's back in one. Regardless of what we think, that's the situation. So that is my take on their astrology.